yet. So, all right, we're just about ready to go here. We are attempting to. Okay, so we may be ready. I'm going to try Blab, and it let me dial in. Okay, outstanding.
I don't see it on their front page yet.
It just put it up just now. All right, beautiful. And
Okay, there it is.
so when it comes up on your page, Rob, do you see the video playing? I just want to make sure.
I'm looking right now.
All right, and if it is, we'll be. You can tell me in a minute. We'll get started.
Okay, it's starting to come in.
All right.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
I
All right.
think we're
I paused it on my side. I don't know if that does anything. So I just if it looks like the video is not updating, we'll know. Okay, we'll officially start. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Todd and listeners out there. Appreciate you coming in and checking us out. This is kind of like the dog days of podcasting right now. So there's stuff to talk about, but it's getting a little thin out there, Todd.
Yeah, there's, and it's everyone's still on break. It's the summer still, and a lot of vacation time by a lot of folks. But about another month from now, people will start doing less outdoor activities. Maybe not. I don't know. It's been so hot. Maybe people haven't been able to enjoy it across the country, and I think that affects the news and the cycle and everything. But maybe I'm wrong.
Oh yeah. Well, it's okay. Blab just restarted, so
Oh, it
okay.
did, huh?
Yeah, that's all right.
All right. It looks like it's up on my end. So,
Yep, it seems to be playing good, and it looks like people are joining us in Blab.
all right, that's good.
Welcome. Yeah.
So we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Blab. If it will work, and if anyone sees the video stop on Blab, let me know. I don't know what the interaction is when I throw in a when I stop it from playing on my side. I assume everyone else is getting it good, but yeah. But what's funny, Rob, is the news cycle may be slow, but nothing else is slow.
No, that's true.
Yeah, everything is cruising. Busy. I had a very busy week. I was telling my wife last night. I said, I wish I could just like sleep for 18 hours. But there was a thing Marissa Meyer talked about working in the early days of Google where someone could work 130 hours a week. And I started doing the math in my head, and I'm like, that's some serious commitment. But then when I got to really thinking about it, it's like 12 hours a day. That's only 7 days a week. That's 96 hours. If I did my right, no, that's not. Yeah, 96 hours. No, 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 no. 84 upper level math today. So, so really all you got to do is get out there to 16, 17, 18 hours a day, and you're at 130 hours a week if you're working 7 days a week. And I've done that before. So, but it's not healthy.
No, it's not. But as everybody, I'm sure, listening to this knows, the advent of the smartphone turned us all of us into 7 day a week, 12 to 15 hour a day workers. So,
And sometimes you just have to put
yep.
the phone down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the the crux of it is a sad thing is that I get support tickets that come in at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday by someone on the East Coast, and they're
Yep.
bitching if you don't. I mean, they are like Twitter blasting, being flaming beat
Oh yeah.
if you don't respond in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And Spreaker, similar to that, we're a global hosting company, so we have people hosting content from all over the world. So you just think about the time zone issues with that. There's constantly things coming in at different times.
And I think that at least for us, we've got a large contingent of customers worldwide too, but they
Yeah.
also know that we're largely an East Coast based company now. With having people, I've got Sean in California, so he's kind of able to, and he has, kind of he's on contract, he's a contractor, so he
Hmm.
can work hours that he wants. So he's, available in the evenings oftentimes to answer tickets. I am too. I watch for critical stuff that comes in where someone's having a meltdown. But it's, there's that 4 or 5 hours between like, midnight my time and by 9 a.m., which would be 6 a.m. Eastern. By 9 a.m. when someone's getting in the office, those 3 hours, oftentimes people just freak out. So it's
Hmm.
tough.
Yeah, it is. So have you heard or seen anything unusual in the space from a platform perspective here lately?
Well,
On the distribution side, the Spotify. I did hear some news that Pandora is interested in adding more podcasts. I'm not exactly sure the details on what that means, but
mm-hmm.
certainly something we have anticipated that would happen for many years now.
Yep.
Tim Westergren has many times said in conversations online that he wants to add more spoken word content to Pandora over time when it's appropriate. So now it seems like they're under pressure based on the music royalty rights to get up content that doesn't have royalties on them. So this would be one way for them to do that. Now podcasts are becoming popular, and um, I've thought that this was going to happen for many years now, and it appears to be happening. You know, we'll see what it really means. If it's adding 5 more podcasts or something like that, then it's not really a meaningful, significant thing.
Yeah, I turned your volume up. I think I turned it up too much.
I swear I'm not yelling into the microphone.
you know, I. But if they do like Spotify and just onesie twosie them in, will it be meaningful? I don't know. That's the problem here with they either they have to go all in or they have or they, because they if they don't, then you alienate the rest of the content creators, and they're not going to promote. You're not going to get the word of mouth if you have 200,000 active podcasters in Pandora and in Spotify. Guess what they're doing? Hey, you can catch me on Spotify. They're saying it at every single show, and they
Yeah,
don't get it. That's the thing that blows my mind. Big company like that, they should be able to ingest every podcast and not even blink.
yeah. I mean, some of at least I know one person at Spotify, the woman that was at Podcast Movement. I think she pretty much gets it. It's just that their methodology isn't compatible with what the expectations of the community are, and I think that's that's where the disconnect happens at a certain level. But I agree. I've heard executives at the company speak as well, and they quote incorrect numbers and really kind of off the wall kind of stuff when it comes to podcasting, like they don't really understand what they're talking about. So I've heard that significantly, but I do know that Rachel, the woman that is kind of running that stuff, she seems to be pretty thoughtful about the space. It's just too bad I lost my interview with her down at Podcast Movement, because I think it would have drawn a lot of clarity to how people perceive the level of thought that Spotify is putting into podcasting. But it's certainly not, unfortunately, certainly not translating into shows being added to the platform. That's for sure.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And their methodology in doing it, I don't fully get it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big company ideology. It's the same struggle at some point that I had, at Microsoft. It's how they only want to add the most popular, biggest shows because somehow they feel like, it's easier to do that, it's cheaper to do that, and it's the 80-20 rule, right?
Right.
It's get in the top 20% to get 80% of the viewers, but that's not really the core dynamics of this space. It's not about that. It's the long tail is much bigger than the short tail.
Yep. Well, there is a couple of topics that I want to talk about, and one of them is a little bit of a bone of contention that's in my crawl right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it involves a certain company that is putting out a podcast industry ranking page, specifically PodTrack.
Yeah.
You know, I tried to talk to PodTrack at Podcast Movement. I don't know how much we talked about this in the past show, but I got this.
Yeah, I spoke to them as well.
I got this, this aggressive, like, fuck you. This is going to be the list, and we're not going to call it the PodTrack industry ranking. We're going to call it the podcast industry ranking. That's what it made me feel like when I got done with the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I see again, and it's being reported. This is starting to be picked up by more people, and they have done something here that I understand why they've done it, but it's so disingenuous. If I tried to do something like this and put it out, first of all, I would never have done it like that. I personally, I just would. I could have put out the blueberry industry ranking, but I just would have never done it the way they've done it. So, I just want people to understand, and podcasters to understand, that this is not indicative of the whole space. And Rob, you and I've talked about it, and Rob Walsh and I've talked about it, and we know that we've got shows in our network that would displace people on their top 10 list. And yet their response was, "We'll send them over." Yeah, right. I don't know. What's your thoughts? Anything additional from besides what you've already said?
Well, they talked to me at Podcast Movement about adding compatibility with their tracking redirect to the Spreaker platform, and I mean, I'm all right with doing that. It's more like catering to what the podcaster wants or may need if they happen to be working with PodTrack to support the PodTrack redirect, which would help that effort on their part to kind of roll up the tracking and around a ranking chart. If they, I think that's the key point of your concern with what they're doing here, is that they're using just a sampling of the podcasting space to come up with an industry ranking, and there's no way that they can be accurate with that because they don't have redirects on every podcast.
No.
And probably they don't have redirects on some of the biggest podcasts.
Right.
So that's the real issue here.
If they called it the PodTrack industry ranking, then I have no problem with that. But
yeah, well, that's what it is, right?
Right. But boy, it's sure not being purported that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that would limit their acceptance and exposure for what they're doing there.
Yep.
So if they do that, because then there's going to be a lot of questions that will come up, like, well, who's part of your list?
Right.
I mean, and they don't probably want to disclose who all their customers are either.
Right. We've supported from the very beginning. If you are using the PowerPress podcasting plugin, we've supported from the beginning. You use whoever's redirect you want, or multiple.
Yeah.
We really don't recommend more than a couple, but
because it can slow down the access to the media file.
Yeah. But there is, that was, just kind of one of the things that I saw that came up that was reported again, and I'm just like, and no one's even questioning, no one's even bringing into, and I would think that folks that are, would be in that top 10 list are, well, what they're going to be then is they're going to be tempted to go over there and work with them if they want to be in that top 10 list. So, from a marketing standpoint, it was a brilliant move, but it sure is disingenuous the way it is, because I know of a lot of shows that are not participating that would and what's going to happen to those folks that are in the top 10 list now that get pushed down?
Well, I'm not sure that the list. I mean, I've looked at the list. That the list really, in some ways, makes a lot of sense because they're lumping networks in with individual shows, and I'm not sure that that makes any sense to actually do that. So like they'll say NPR, and then they'll see WNYC, and then they'll say in actual individual podcast, all on the same ranking chart.
Yeah.
And I guess you can do that if you're rolling up all the numbers across all those NPR shows or something like
Well,
that.
you should break those NPR shows out one by one, and
Yeah.
then
Well,
see where they fit in there.
yeah.
You
But
know,
why
if you
they feel like they have to roll up networks and individual shows together in a ranking chart doesn't make any sense. It
you-
seems to be driving an agenda,
right.
not a real useful list,
Yep.
right?
Yet you have the Moth, who single show up against big networks.
Yeah.
Where's Adam Carolla in that list? He's not in there.
No, because Norm is not working with PodTrack. I'll put it to you that way.
That's right. Where's ESPN? They're not in there.
Mm-hmm.
Where's ABC? Where's Moody Industries?
Yeah.
Let me look.
There's hundreds.
Right, hundreds of shows.
How Stuff Works is another one.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that and it's, I don't know. We'll have to see. We haven't got to a point where our customers are willing to say, "Yeah, go ahead and dump it out there." It's they don't mind sharing with media buyers, but it's not something they and some of these companies are public companies too, so sometimes they can't put some of that stuff out there because of Sarbanes-Oxley, and they have to be very, very careful with that.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
it's very true.
There's a little bit of a discussion. There was an article over on Rain talking about the download on podcast ad injection, programmatic move into podcasting. You and I have talked about this to death. And I just want to read something that was said in this article that I kind of laughed at. It said, at a recent International Advertising Association conference in Australia hosted by Nova Entertainment, that group's head of creative services warned that programmatic advertising kill podcasting. If you just buy the best CPM available and stick it in there, you lose the contextualization, and then podcasts become dead, saying Andy Milne. I like Andy. Rain goes back and says, that's dire. Let's back up a little. In the podcast resurgence of the last 2 years, direct response advertising left the on-demand category to monetization types. We've heard of off-the-record reports of $80 CPMs for host-read promotions. Yeah, maybe one deal out of 1,000 is 80. So programmatic advertising tradition in personal campaign format. Oh, that is something we really need to focus on. Programmatic advertising is traditional and impersonal. That explains it all in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you also see the comment in here that Sean Carr gave? He's the co-founder of Art19 about host reads.
Yeah. It says, first, a host read sponsor message doesn't have to be a live read. You might assume they always are. Of course. We all know that. Yeah. Almost always. This is actually not true. Almost always the host recording them to get them the take right. It's not right. That's not true. Almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, the foundation of this whole industry on advertising was really baked in live reads.
Yeah. It's not almost always. For his business model, it always is.
Yeah. Well, he's probably trying to push the envelope into pre-recorded host reads that can be dynamically inserted.
He says occasionally they will do a live read inside the show, but that is unusual. That is not. He is wrong. Absolutely.
That's the most common thing.
Right.
That's what he's pushing
on
his platform.
It's his agenda. And
Yeah.
speaking of which, Art 19, and this is a shocker to me, Midroll said they would never do programmatic. They would never do ad injection advertising. That was something they came out and said very strongly.
I don't
Uh,
know.
Midroll and Art 19 have done a deal
Yeah.
and announced it.
Yeah. Well, it was
Select
more
select shows. It was a soft PR piece.
okay. I was given okay to make a comment on that. That is a test run
Oh,
between Art 19 and Scripps.
they
It's
didn't say
not.
they didn't say test in the PR
I
piece.
know. I know they didn't. But I was told by a little um, fly that was a test run, and it was kind of a PR exchange situation for a better deal on the whole thing.
Hmm,
Um, so they're like you just said, they have said that they're not going to get into programmatic.
right.
But that isn't to say that they're not going to test around and try and learn about doing dynamic insertion of pre-recorded host reads, though.
Right.
So I think that's what this is all about: is working with a small set of shows, which I think we need to be clear. A small set of shows will try this, right? It's
Yeah,
not every show.
right.
It may be every show on the Art 19 platform, but generally, if you look at mid-roll or any of these platforms, most of them, believe me, while you may be able to get somebody like a Mark Maron to do a dynamically inserted ad, but it is going to have to be a host read that's
Right.
dynamically inserted. He's not going to do it, and it certainly is not going to be a programmatic ad that's a branded, pre-produced spot by the advertiser. Uh, you're never going to see that in certain big podcasts. Not going to happen.
Right. And I
So
think, no matter how hard you try to make that ad sound, make it sound like it's the real deal, a real host endorsed ad, it like we talked about on the last show, you have to work on that transition. You have to get very good at it.
yep, yeah, and it's going to be an art to
Hmm.
actually do that and have it be convincing to the audience and not sound, um, you know, contrived.
Right.
And not everybody's going to be able to pull that off,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And we've had some discussions this past week with some folks, on the commercial side, commercial entities, radio stations, so forth, about this exact topic. And for our radio stations and those types of folks, they're used to having, an ad that's pre-produced that, unless it's a talk guy, unless he's morning drive, he's not doing, they're not typically doing a lot of host endorsed, maybe one or two, but most of them are, pre-baked, impersonal. I like that word, impersonal ads that are being run.
Impersonal, I like
Yeah, the way they actually wrote up in Rain is I am impersonal.
wow.
Yeah, I didn't know impersonal. I don't think I've ever used impersonal as a word before, but let's look it up in Google. Make sure that that's an actual word and not a typo.
A typo, yeah. Well,
Impersonal, yeah, not influenced, not showing or involving personal feelings. Hey, that is the deal. I'm going to use that
it's
new word.
yeah, I mean it's not an endorsement, really.
No,
It's not a
no.
personal endorsement.
Yeah, impersonal was a word I was more familiar with, but impersonal, I like that.
Yeah.
So, all you podcasters out there, like when you talk about dynamic, when you talk about pre-baked ads, this is like a Geico ad. The word you want to use is they're impersonal.
Yeah. And in some shows that want to get advertising, there are a few examples of shows that will never do host reads because there's something about the content of the show that the host has to maintain their um, their kind of credibility and
Right,
not be perceived as selling out to a product
right,
or a service.
right.
So there are certain shows that can never do host reads. but it's unusual.
Yep. So I've decided to embark on another project,
Yes, I heard about this.
and it's actually announced it last night, and it's gotten huge. I mean, overwhelming response already. It may have a hit on my hands here, and then we haven't even recorded episode one. So the and I've talked about doing this for a long, long time. I've set on a domain called podcastlegends.com. It doesn't go to anything right now, folks. You go to it, goes to a GoDaddy page or maybe a redirect page to Geek News Central. There's no website for it yet, but will be this week. Basically, I want to go back and I want to go way back. I want to go back to the beginning, and I want to talk to the folks that were here in the podcasting space in the beginning. These when I say legends, it's I'm not. It's going to be all takers. I'm not going to be focused on the superstars. I'm going to be focused on the 100 or 200 that really helped us launch this space in the very, very beginning. The C.C. Chapmans of the world, the Michael Butlers, the Don and Drew, obviously Dave Weiner, Adam Curry, all those folks, and I'm going to let them. And it's just basically I'm going to let them tell their story. Who, what, when, and where, and that's the. I'm just going to let them talk and tell their. It's basically going to almost be a biography, background / passion. Why I pod faded. Any behind the scenes dirt I can get out of them will even be good. Whatever we can pull out of them from, lessons learned, regrets, the whole 9 yards.
Todd, what's the reason for the timing of this and the concept of this coming out now? Is there I can envision a couple of reasons that you have, but I just want to hear it from you.
uh, well, we've talked about it on this show many, many times.
Yeah.
This industry was built on passion, was built on the ability to be able to change and to disrupt the world. And I think a lot of people have lost focus of the power we have in this space. And I also want people to understand that this space was built by some dude like me that was in the Navy working electronics that had a blog that decided to start doing a podcast because I wanted to, you know, I wasn't a broadcast guy. I wasn't with NPR. And I think those stories are important. And there's probably, there's a million things in the back of my head, Rob, that is the genesis of this thing. But what do you think? What do you think my reasoning is?
Well, I think it could be twofold. I think it's making sure that the kind of the history and
Yeah.
the motivations of people that started this space is preserved somehow,
Yeah.
put out there. There's a lot of new people that are coming into this medium
Yeah.
that I'm not sure really appreciate its roots and why it exists today and why the
Mm-hmm.
people created it at the time. And so we don't lose sight of that as the industry grows and develops. We've seen a lot of new people from new industries on the radio side and the
Yeah.
online radio side come into the space, and in some ways, I think that there's been an influence there that has kind of lost the purpose. And what is unique about podcasting, I think there's been an interest in some to try and change it
And
to be something that it's not and wasn't intended to be.
and there's a million stories out there. We went and saw a documentary that it had been produced by
Yeah.
most of the folks out of LA. It was a great story about their show and their fans, and it was done well for their community. But it really, in my it was about them, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there needs to be a capturing of thoughts of the history and the what everything, like you said, that went into this as well. I just think it'll be fascinating, even for me, to be we're podcasters. We should audio document this space, and and have some preservation of that. If I can get the participants that I want, I think it's gonna be it's gonna be a fabulous show. If I don't care, I'm gonna be entertained. I don't care if anybody else listens. Because there's many stories, Rob, you and I don't know. There was 4 or 5 4 or 5 tracks of people. You had the Pacho folks that were going. You had,
Hmm.
you had the pickle guys. You had the Libsyn folks. You had us come on the scene. There was like this
Hmm.
and you had folks that were doing audiobooks, and you had, there was such a wide breadth, A to Z, topic wise, and people clustering up together. There's a lot of cool stories out there.
Yeah, I think one comment that I saw that Evo made in your comment thread on Facebook was that the big difference about the early podcast space and now is that everybody knows each other from back then.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
And
we're all friends.
yeah, and that should say something about what the roots of the space are. It's hard to do that now
Right.
practically, just because
Right.
there's so many people involved in podcasting now that weren't involved. I mean, we're talking about a group of maybe 200 or 300 people that we're talking about from the early days of this medium. And you look at it now and you're talking hundreds of thousands of people, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people out there that don't even do a podcast that are involved in podcasting. So which is quite different than it used to be.
With the first New Media Expo, we all kind of showed up, and man, it was like we'd been all listening to each other.
Yeah.
We were all listening to each other. We knew each other from being so we couldn't couldn't listen to enough podcast. And you
Yeah.
went there and you're like hugging these people, and shaking hands, and you automatic, because you were already in there. You were in their head, they were in your head and you were in
Yeah.
theirs, and we had these massive parties, and oh my god, you just have no idea.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep calling the original New Media Expo, going back, the first few years while it was still in Oxnard, was, or where we were at. It was a family reunion,
Yeah.
and it was like, man, a bunch of creative folks having a good time. And sure, there was rivalries and competition and all that stuff, but it was just, man, it was great. It was kumbaya. It was fantastic.
But Todd, I mean, if you think about it, though, even back in those days, the the podcast expo was about the same size as
Yeah,
podcast movement.
yep, it sure was. And
So yeah.
if and we've stressed to Dan, and maybe people don't understand, the reason we stress to Dan and the team over there, and is keep that vibe, keep the close vibe, keep us all together,
Hmm.
so that we want, because I want the podcasters of today, and hopefully the podcast movement is doing this, is to keep that closeness of everyone together, friendships and helping each other and all that stuff the space is well known for. And we may sound like a bunch of old stogies here, and those of you that think, oh, these guys are just talking about the old days, but I want that to be, I want everyone to experience what we experienced.
Yeah, I feel like to some degree that the community has been kind of like fractured, and it's been this way for many years, but fractured by subgroups that have come together and kind of feel like they somewhat kind of exclude
Right.
the greater podcast space, and they kind of have their own little clique. It's almost like high school cliques, right? I'm not saying this to be insulting to anybody in the podcast community. I'm just saying that it feels like there's a little bit of a generational thing going on here
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
where you get the old guard like you and I, and when we're talking about the old days of podcasting and rah rah rah, and that's what they say about people as they get older, they start looking more back than forward.
Yep.
And I think to some degree, that's what the difference is here. We tend to look more back, and the new people in the space tend to look more forward. And when that happens, you have a divide. And
Right.
and I think that's kind of happening in this space.
Well, that's, Rob, that's one of the reasons why I want to throw up every time I heard the word mastermind
Yeah, well, I
or
wasn't going to use that word,
or
but
or
that's part of
tribe
that.
or
That
tribe.
yeah, that's part of what I'm talking about.
Shoot me in the head, please. Tribe, the tribe. This is the tribe. It's like they have to call it something. I guess that's, uh,
Yeah, that's true.
and when those folks go to those events, they all hang out together. And maybe they're doing themselves harm by not spreading their wings a little bit and talking to people outside their tribe.
But I didn't get a sense that this year the
No, no, no.
podcast movement made it a point to try and have events that really enabled the community to really get together.
You felt that they
Uh,
did or didn't?
did not.
Oh, well, they had
I
the
don't.
afternoon events, so
Did they? Okay.
well, the evening events. I didn't make it to the evening events. For me, the evening events were like hanging out in the lobby or hanging out at the bar, chit chatting where there wasn't eighty
Yeah.
thousand megawatts of music playing in my ear.
Well, and that's a reoccurring theme here that has impacted the ability of this community to stay all connected to each other at these events.
Yeah,
Is loud music. It's been number one, and venue. I mean, if the
yeah,
venue is too small,
yeah.
people are jammed together.
Hot.
Hot. They can't move around to find people. I mean, fortunately, I'm tall. I mean, I went to some of those after hours events, and at least I can see across the room.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a challenge on that side still. Um, and I know that the prior year of podcast movie, we all got together in that one big facility for a one night thing
Right.
where pretty much everybody showed up. I mean, even Mark Maron showed up to that event.
Yeah.
Um, and that seemed to be one of those kinds of events that kind of enable people, bring people together a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. But I didn't sense that at Podcast Movement this year that they had that similar kind of thing. I don't know if it was just difficult to find a venue like that in downtown Chicago.
Well, finding one big enough to handle 1,500 people,
Yeah,
that's
that's a big undertaking,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So, and I'm not gonna, I'm not. Believe me, we're not talking bad about the podcast movement. It's just a matter of, these things are hard to do, hard to pull off
Yeah,
as as the space, as the things get bigger.
yeah,
I've
and it's constructive feedback, I think, to the show too. But maybe the new people in the space don't see a value in doing that. I don't know. I see a value in it.
the
Um,
conference for me is the conference value is the networking.
yeah,
They can have all the sessions. That's good, and there might be one or two I want to go to, but for me, it's like grabbing that person in the hallway and talking to them, and
yeah,
that's what are you doing? What are you doing new? What are you trying? Where's your problems? That's
yeah. I mean, a lot of these people in the space, you only see once a year
yeah.
or have an opportunity to see once a year, and sometimes it's a lot of times what happens is that you miss them entirely at the
Mm-hmm.
event.
Mm-hmm.
I know that happened a lot to me because of course, we're both working booths and doing panels and stuff, which
Yeah.
kind of takes us out of being really accessible.
Yep.
Um,
But going back to this whole this whole idea behind this show is I want to get deep. I want to get down in the soul of this thing. I really hope people are going to be able to open up and do a dump. And so we'll see where it is. Where and I'm not saying, and Rob, we got to be careful here too. The community is still doing great things. There's still a fantastic amount of great
yeah.
content coming out.
Well, it's just it's getting so big. It's kind of hard to keep that community together,
You're right.
and it may not be possible anymore. I think, and it's going to be possible in small subgroups, and that I believe that's what we're seeing happen because of the scale of the community. And as it becomes a more serious business, there's going to be more people getting involved in this that are maybe less talkative because they're not podcasters, or maybe they're less of the similar mind of the original creators of this podcast community, and have a different approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening as well. Um, there's different attitudes that are coming into this space that are coming from other industries. I mean, public radio and commercial radio, which have different cultures
Yeah.
than the roots of podcasting, and that's going to impact the cohesion of this community.
Well, radio, it's dog eat dog. It's all about the market share, the ratings, the sweeps weeks and all that stuff that goes on. And, it's the bragging rights. I've got this much. It's I think they're all, the radio industry itself is, go to radio events and they're all friends, just like podcasters are.
You bet. You bet. And it's similar. It's very similar in a lot of ways. A lot of, it's a generational thing over there too. And I believe that radio is kind of struggling with that right now, because I think it's an older generation that's running radio, and they're struggling to be appealing to the younger generation now.
Yeah.
And that's what they're seeing that's really attractive about the podcast space is there's younger people over here.
And and let's be honest. Anyone that's really over 40, maybe even over 50, we're if you really want to know the opinions of the folks that are 25, we're all freaking idiots, So that's a mindset that is just niche. And I think it's globally. If you're old, you're stupid. If you're young, I'm the guy that's got the fresh, bright ideas. Get up, and move out of the way, and that's just the way life is, And and I welcome fresh ideas, but I also remember very, very clearly talking to a venture capitalist who told me, "You're too old to start a business, and your team is too spread out, and there's no way I would invest you. You guys are going to fail." And it's like, oh, really? And he spent his $26 million on another company, and they're gone. And his $26 million got flushed down the toilet. So, so I think that there is value in having a little wisdom on a team.
Well, then a big infusion of capital can completely change the culture of the company and potentially cause it to fail. Where how you've built your company and how others have built companies that have lasted have been less dependent on venture capital to grow.
I had to shut the blinds. I was getting washed out in the face.
Oh, yeah, it is bright. Yeah.
It is. So, yeah, it was, I don't know. We've diverged here quite a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how see if I can dig these stories out of these folks. And it may take some prompting. People's memories wane. And I think we should also use caution that all the stories may not be 100% accurate. When you're trying to go back 12 years, I think about stuff from time to time, and someone will go back and say, that was wrong. You remember it was this way. And you think, oh, yeah, it was. So, there has to be a little bit of understanding in that, too.
Yeah, and I think, podcast legends, I think, can go to encapsulate some people that maybe are not current podcasters. Maybe they're
Podfaders,
Emil
for sure.
Berkwin, or they can be, guys that really created this space that have moved on.
Yeah.
And what's the reason for why they moved on?
Yeah. Someone's asked.
Doug K is another one.
Yeah, Doug K for sure. Hey, there was a couple of questions in Blab. Apologies, quick question here. What are you using to stream from YouTube to Blab? We're just pasting in the YouTube embed into Blab, but we're actually using the stream to YouTube and to Facebook is a TriCaster. And also, what kind of microphone is that? This is a Blue Mic Mouse. So it's the mouse line, and yes, it has beautiful sound, but it also has a beautiful price too. So it's so just don't be shocked when you go over there. But it's I love this mic.
So speaking of that, so how much is that, Mike?
I think it's $1,300 or $1,400.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I know this one, the Shure, it's SM7B, is about $350.
Yeah, and that's a nice mic. We have those in the studio in
Mhm.
Columbus. This is um, a condenser mic, so
Yeah.
it's it basically most folks don't like using condensers. Most use that's it. You've got a dynamic, Rob. I'm on a condenser. I just like
Yep.
the richness and sounds of condensers more than the dynamics. But
No, I
um,
agree.
and I've got a Heil PR40 up in the cabinet up there. I used it for about 5 shows, and I hated the sound. It just didn't fit my voice. It's a great mic. And it
Hmm.
just, every mic is a little bit different for people. Don't be afraid if you buy a mic, by the way, to send a mic back. Get it on your pedestal, use it 3, 4 times. If you say, send the thing back. Don't keep it. Don't go outside the return period. If you can't get to a Guitar Center or someplace like that out to test out a nice mic, don't be afraid to send one back.
Yeah. Yeah, because they do vary a lot in sound
Yep.
for different voices. And you do need to kind of play around with them and see what fits with what you like. There's a lot of podcasters that hate their voices already, so you don't want to have a microphone that makes you hate your voice more.
Yep. So
So,
anyway, going back to the podcast legends thing, we'll get that kicked off in a couple of weeks. I obviously want a couple of key people for the first couple of shows, so getting them recorded. And I don't know how long. I'm almost scared to know how long these shows are going to take. They could end up being 3 or 4 hours. I hope they don't go that long, but they could. And I vowed not to set a time limit, which is scary.
that is scary.
Yeah. Hey,
But
there was anyone that has downloaded and reinstalled Audacity recently. There was about a 3 or 4 hour period where Audacity was infected. So if not to scare you,
not
but
the application itself, but the download of the application, I guess, had an additional little prize attached to it, right?
yeah, well, there was it
Or was the code compromised?
yeah, I believe the code was compromised, or the installer or something was compromised.
It's probably the installer.
Yeah, and and basically you'll know, just reboot your computer. You
That's
reboot
a
your
great way to find out, Todd.
you'll know if you're infected or not because it won't boot. And they use an absolute old school virus technique. They just erased the master boot record.
Oh,
So
isn't that nice of them?
yeah, it was
Yes.
nice. So if you have your recovery CD, which I know each and every one of you know exactly where that disc is, and
Yes, of course. Yes.
okay, here's a little trick for you. You don't know where your recovery CD is? You're all shaking your head yes, because about 80% of you don't. When you make one, um, tape it to your monitor, or if you have a desktop, tape it to the desktop. Actually, get some, okay, if it's in a place where your wife is going to complain, um, tape it someplace where no one can see it, but it's not going to get stuck in a drawer somewhere. So, what I do for all current laptops, I actually use the laptop box that it came in. I keep the laptop box. Or if it's a desktop, I just tape it to the desktop.
Or if you don't have a CD player, you have to use a USB.
Right. Yeah. Either way. And matter of fact, here's a recovery stick for one of the things I have too. So
Yep.
you never know when, you're going to reboot and you get the message that says, oh, no, thank you. So
Yeah.
let's hear what else was in a little bit of news stuff. There's a article about what if my friends and family don't care about my podcast.
It's a bad sign.
Well, it's more common than you would think.
Yes.
The podcast host has got a great story about that.
Yeah.
In my home, that was basically I was under a 2-year timeline to make it profitable. Or if I hadn't become profitable in 2 years, Geek Central would not be in existence because she was going to shut it down. I may have won the argument 2 years later, but I don't know. So thank God for monetization. But um, you can just count on your friends aren't going to care about your podcast. Probably most of them are going to say, "What the hell's a podcast?"
Hopefully that's happening less and less now.
Yeah, that was a question I got in the beginning. What? What are you doing? Huh? You're doing what? And you're like, oh, he's just a geek. Okay. They already knew I was a nerd anyway, so okay, you're doing some internet audio thing, So
Exactly.
yeah, now they think I'm cool. Oh, now they know what a
Yeah.
podcast is.
Yeah, I don't find that a lot of people out there that I talk to are unknowledgeable about what podcasting is or don't know about it, right? Or haven't
Right.
heard the term at least.
Yeah.
I think most people have by now.
Yeah. I don't think we have that identification problem. Thank goodness. But anyway, that was just a couple of news things. There is some sort of pod crawl thing going on. You were reading about it, Rob, over at Podcaster News.
Yeah. It's let me pull it up here. I think I had it on my screen here. Podcrawl. I think you had it on your blog, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Podcrawl 2016 is happening August 20th in London. I guess it's an old-fashioned pub crawl. I'm not exactly sure what a pub crawl is. I don't know if it's an
You've
event
never
where
been on a pub crawl?
they just do a bunch of drinking.
Yes.
Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, it's basically it.
Okay.
It's you go with a group of people, and at least the
Yeah.
pub crawls I've been on. I did one in Korea once, and that
So
night,
it's a pod crawl.
we ended up in jail that night. But
So I guess it's it's an event that's being organized by a veteran podcaster, Rowley Cutler, and of the Dark Compass show.
Yep.
So he's I guess doing this in the UK.
That's cool. Well, one thing is for sure about a pub crawl is about your 10th beer, you can really start lying about your stats because then no one will remember the next day.
That's true. Now he doesn't say specifically that there's a lot of beer involved here, but I mean, is it?
The pub crawls I've been involved in is the rule is you go into a bar and every person that's on the pub crawl drinks at least one cocktail while they're, whether it be a beer or a mixed drink, you drink at least one and then you go to the next pub. That's the pub crawls I've been involved in.
Yeah, but this is a pod crawl. So.
Okay, so it's a particular of a good old-fashioned pub crawl and add another part of podcasting to it, and you got yourself a pod crawl. So it is still a pub crawl, but doing it with a bunch of podcasters. Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we could start something like that here.
That'd be fun.
Of course, I do my podcast meetup here in Seattle. I haven't done it for a couple of months now at a sports bar.
Yeah.
Does that count as a
yeah?
pub crawl?
I think so. As long as you're drinking, as long as you order like a pitcher for every person, that would probably qualify in the quantity.
A pitcher for every person. Yeah, like that's. I'm gonna have cops out on the street corner of the restaurant waiting.
You have everyone Uber in, and you definitely don't be drinking and driving. But I'll be honest with you, I think we need to drink more alcohol these days with all the crazy stuff in the news and everything going on. I think we all just need to drink a little bit more cocktails and make us all feel a lot better.
Todd, you're just safer than the rest of us out there in Hawaii.
Why do you say that?
Well, you're surrounded by all those Democrats out there. They're not going to do anything to you. They don't typically carry guns. So
Oh, Hawaii. Okay. Hawaii has the almost the highest percentage of gun owners per capita than any state in the country. Don't let political
Really?
leanings fool you. Oh no,
Oh, okay.
they buy their guns in mass quantities here, just like anyone else.
Wow, you got to be
It,
careful though. You shoot a gun there, and then you know it could probably cross the whole island.
well, I don't know if it had something to do with World War II and being attacked. It's maybe that mentality. I don't.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting perspective on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, if that's ruminations that run through today, I don't know, but yes, we are
Sure.
we are very. The state is very, very, very. Actually, I make people mad because I make local Hawaiians mad when I say this, but I do it in jest. The monarchy, the United States, by many Hawaiian standards, overthrew the monarchy here. There's much resentment to that. So I always say that the Democratic Party here is a democratic monarchy. Monarchy. Yeah, the Democratic
Monarch.
monarchy. We're not because it's if here's what you do. If you're a Republican in Hawaii, you go register and run as a Democrat because it's true, absolutely true. There's a lot of Republicans that run as Democrats because if you run as Republican, you're not going to win. So you run as a Democrat, and
You govern as a conservative, right?
you have to be very moderate because they don't stand for they won't they'll run you out of town on a rail if there's any type of conservative things that come out of your mouth. So yeah, that's just the way it is in this state. It's very, very left. And most times, and here's the real reason, most people don't vote in this state for people with issues. They vote for their aunties, their uncles, their friend's cousin. It's a lot of that here. So
Sure.
a lot of local politics. It's not about the issues more often than not. So
Yeah.
anyway, enough on politics. And we have there are states in the lower 48 that are just like that, but on the right. So, you can't run as a Republican, you can't run as a Democrat in some states in the United States and win. So it's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's true. There are certain states that are very heavily leaning one way or
Right,
the other.
right, right,
Yes.
right. So just the way it is. But
Yeah.
that's I haven't I have purposely been not listening. I used to listen to the political shows during the season, but it's just so much stuff. I've unfollowed probably 200 people on Facebook just to get this. It's just I can't handle it.
Yeah, I've completely stopped posting anything about politics on any of the social networks.
Yeah,
It's so polarizing right now.
yeah, man. It's one side or the other, and everyone hates each other. It's horrible. So it's
Yeah.
just the way it is. Okay, so anyway, I think we all need to do a pub crawl. Organize one in your town, and if there's only 3 bars, you can visit the 3 bars 10 times. You just go in a circle.
So does that mean that if you're doing a pod crawl, that somehow there has to be a connection to podcasting somehow beyond just that they're all podcasters?
I think it's just a social thing. Bring your audience out or something. Let your hair down. So I think this is what this guy's trying to do. He's just trying to have
Trying to create some community.
yeah.
Huh?
And he goes back. He says, before I started Podcrawl in its current form, Adam Curry of the Daily Source Guard started an office for Podshow in London and got to a group of podcasters in the UK. He called it a Podcrawl, although the group did not move from pub to pub. In 2008, the first Podcrawl came about by chance. Actually, I was listening to two music podcasts. So basically, they took something that was so maybe they aren't doing actual, but anyway, that's what they're calling it. It's a pod crawl. So and the link is up on podcasternews.com. You can check it out for those of you in the UK if you want to hang out. But the one I did in Korea, I was with a bunch of Navy guys, and we were drinking Oscar. Any of you guys know what Oscar is in Korea? Those of you do know it's not a drink you should drink in mass quantities. And the last place we ended up in, we were walking into this place, and there was a young lady that met us at the door and said there was a private party here. You can't come in. And we kind of pushed our way in, and it didn't turn out so well. Fists flew, and we all ended up in the pokey. And the pokey means the slammer, and not the Korean slammer, the military slammer. So don't drink Oscar on a pub crawl.
There you go.
TMI, right? TMI. All right. There was some other stuff.
Yeah, I was just looking at.
Oh, Rob,
Yeah, I was
you're
kind of.
go ahead.
Oh, I was this past week on my Speaker Live show. I was talking a lot about using affiliate programs and ways for beginner podcasters to start making money with their shows potentially. I think maybe we talked about this a little bit last week, I suppose. So just to help people get started. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that they need to have advertising right away on their show, and they actually can.
Yeah.
It just do it through cost per lead or cost per acquisition or an affiliate program or something like that, and you can start doing it right away. And you're not going to make a huge amount of money, but you might be able to make some.
I think it's important for you if you're going to do affiliate, and here's the key: it's a long haul process, and you have to engage your blog in the strategy to make the affiliate work. Don't be afraid to create a dedicated landing page for that product or service.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And link it in your show notes so that people have a central place to go to. And I wouldn't intermix products on that page. I would promote one product on the page, and that may help you with your affiliate stuff a little bit.
So Todd, I just noticed on the Rain News site that there's a post in there about the EFF. I guess there's an update around personal audio.
Really?
Yeah, I guess personal audio seeks appeal in lost podcasting patents. So the Electronic Frontier Foundation may return to court for its case against personal audio over podcasting patents after filing several patent infringement cases against large and small podcasters. Key elements of the personal audio property protections were invalidated last spring. The EFF argued that the claims of the inventions existed prior to personal audio's filing, and the podcast lawsuits of which targeted Adam Carolla were widely regarded as patent trolling. Personal Audio has since filed an appeal of the decision, and the EFF is trying to confirm its ability to participate in the appeal. Oral arguments before the panel of U.S. Court of Appeals for Federal Circuit are slated to begin on August 4th.
Wow, that's like, whoa. When did they post this?
It's actually on the Electronic Frontier Foundation website, dated August 2nd.
This is the 6th, so this has already happened.
Yeah. So here, I'll post it in the Blab thread line there.
Personal
so
audio.
Folks can see it here.
These folks. Ay.
So they're still going after it, looks like, but it doesn't mean that it's going to get overturned. Chances are it probably won't be overturned.
Yeah, it's much harder to get something overturned than. Yeah. So we'll see, but they see dollar signs is what they do.
Yep.
And for those of you that aren't aware or haven't been around for this, there was a company, Personal Audio, who basically had a patent that they said was the antithesis of podcasting. They had a number of claims. They went after Adam Carolla, who, in all intents and purposes, settled, I believe, with Personal Audio.
Well, they went after some big media companies. They went after
Right.
NBC. They went after How Stuff Works, which is basically Discovery,
Yep.
which now um, Discovery has sold How Stuff Works. So anyway, that's kind of old news. But yeah, there's a lot of big and smaller companies that were impacted by this.
And some that
Um,
were actually impacted that never publicly talked about it.
yeah,
So they were just trying to get out from underneath it. But without the patent, it's very hard for them to go forward with the lawsuits and basically the request for money um, for the
yeah,
infringement. So that's we'll see where this goes. I'm surprised they're coming back. How
yeah.
long? It's been what? A year, 10 months,
Oh yeah, it's been at least a year. Yeah,
or more.
and yeah, and just to give everybody a little bit of background on this, I mean, this is one of many patent battles that have happened over the years in the podcasting space. There's been a couple of different companies that have come out saying that they have a patent on podcasting, and most of it doesn't wind up going anywhere in the long run. But a lot of people get freaked out about it.
And rightfully so because um, patent trolls have a detrimental effect on the space. They can stifle growth. They can stifle innovation, suck money out of the space if they are allowed to. And let's be frank. There's going to be some people that have legitimate patents, and they should be compensated if they have a patent that if you're infringing on. But at the same time, there are some companies that are just patent mills, and that's their whole business.
Yep. So I guess the court hearing is actually has happened. So the court hearing was on August 4th at 10 a.m.
I
So
don't know if the
yeah,
EFF participated or not.
yes, they did.
Oh, they did.
It looks like, yeah. It says it it happened at the U.S. Court of Appeals, Federal Circuit Court in Washington D.C.
Hmm. So it'll be
So
another 6 months before the appeals court comes out with a ruling.
yeah, yeah, probably.
Yeah. And if it does, then what it does is it gets pushed back down to the lower court. I don't think they can over. Yeah, they can. I think. Yeah, they can overturn something, can't they?
They could, but they have to have a pretty good reason to.
Yeah.
They can't just do it, you know, unless there's evidence that invalidates the last ruling.
Right.
And I know a lot of deep uh, research and background was done on the prior case.
Yeah. The EFF actually went out and had a fundraising, and thousands of podcasters stepped up and wrote checks.
Yep, I know. I
Yep.
did as well. I know
Yep.
probably you did as
Yeah,
well.
I did.
And they also did an outreach to the entire community to come up with people sharing, you know,
Information.
prior art, prior
Yeah.
precedent. And they found it, and there were multiple examples that were presented in court.
Personal Audio even went to court to try to get the donor list that the EFF, the people that contributed, they got that stifled. So, people were able to donate to the EFF anonymously and not worry about Personal Audio coming back after them in, let's just say it, retribution. So the list of donors were able to be kept secret. They actually had to go to court to fight that as well.
Yeah.
So there was we were concerned about it, and now that this is in appeals again, it just starts another round of uncertainty, which this kind of stuff can slow down investment. It can slow down people's decision points on whether or not they're going to buy a company or that all. It's because if you remember, Rob, that there was a period of uncertainty and not a lot of deals were going through. And about the time this thing wrapped up, then we started seeing a number of deals being made. That was advancing. Advancing the space.
Yeah. No, and who knows what's going to happen here in the next year or so. We're kind of winding down a little bit on the kind of articles and publicity around podcasting, and maybe we are coming into a kind of like a not necessarily slowing down of the of the consumption of this medium, but more of a slowing down
A hype
pub,
cycle.
in the hype cycle and public awareness.
Yeah.
It could have kind of peaked here, um, and that's there's normal cycles with these kinds of things.
So I don't know how much I can say, but I will say that that the IEB measurement standards document is they've accepted all final comments. They're in a chop, and I think soon we're going to get to see get our final say. So I think we're we're very close. I don't know what the timeline is on having that document being on the street. Another document that they produced about a year ago is called the Digital Audio Spire Guide, and that document's review process is in work right now as well. I can't go into any details on exactly what's happening, but there is continued movement at the IEB to help define and move the space forward from a standard standpoint, and giving some tools for media buyers and how they're what they should expect from podcasts and digital audio. So that continues to be and this statistics guidelines or measurement document or whatever the end of the title is going to be gets on the street. I think that's going to help us a lot. And companies are going to have to decide whether or not they want to, basically come into compliance. I don't know how that. I think it's it's not mandatory by any means, but it's something that a guideline that they can use to use what we would consider best practices, I guess.
Okay, and that's going to be pushed out publicly out to the entire community.
Yeah, when it's done, when it's ready for publication. Oh yeah, it'll be very public, and that'll generate some news cycles, I'm sure. So I just again, I can't at this point in the game. I have to be very, very careful on what I say. We're at the final stage here, and I want to make sure that this thing gets done. But from my perspective and from my team's perspective, we're at least when we saw it go into draft for final review comments, we were very pleased where the document was at. And that's from my standpoint, that's saying a lot. So we'll just hopefully we'll get our hands on the final cut here soon. Because what they did was the document was draft. They got it in a rough release. Everyone got to review it, like the 20 or 25 companies that are involved got to review it, got to make comments, mark it up, and then they go back and look at those based on the whole history of everything that's been discussed over the last 18 months, decide if there needs to be. And my understanding was there wasn't a lot of changes, that's really good. So we'll see. We'll see at the end here what the product is. I'm excited because I think it's good for the podcasting space. And we've spent, let's just be honest, spent a lot of capital, and we've given up IP, and other companies have spent a lot of capital and given up IP to try to get this thing dialed in.
So, Todd, did you see the the fairly extensive article in Rain News about Art 19? I think you did probably,
Which one was that?
It was dated August 3rd for Rain News. It was just an article that kind of outlines that the partnership with Midroll and then all the other partners that they have and how they've launched a new audience measurement technology.
Okay, they can go ahead and do that. We'll see if it.
Yeah.
I've gotten some emails by some folks. What do you think about these companies trying to set new standards?
I don't. Yeah, it's not clear if they're talking about standards as much as he's just getting involved in offering some metrics on what he's doing on their hosting platform. You know, but yeah, I've been trying to invite Sean to come on the show, so maybe eventually he will make it, and we can talk about all this stuff. That'd be great.
Yep. Keep telling podcasters the suits are coming. The suits are coming.
Yeah.
So just be aware. But he the Art 19 was not involved in the IEB discussion, so we put our money where our mouth was, and and you had to put your money where your mouth is because you don't get into the IEB for free.
Yeah. Yeah. They're it's an investment.
No, it is, and we wanted to make sure that we at least had our 2 cents in to um and at least to be able to have some input, and we did.
So I see in the article, Sean made a statement that's been publicly put out here. Sean compares the state of podcasting data to streaming audio. So in order to make podcasting a staple buy to the agency world, it's our belief that we have to deliver data on the level of streaming audio. Streaming audio data is phenomenal. Perfect listening telemetrics, frequently with registered users and all kinds of demographic data. When you compare that with podcasting today, it's hard for buyers to make that case internally.
I don't agree with that at all. He's trying to make shit up. This is not.
Well, it's also, that's kind of a perspective of kind of like a behind a paywall or behind a platform. So that's maybe the kind of data that Apple would have, or it's a proprietary platform type of perspective, which maybe is the direction of this space in the long run, is that more and more listening is going to happen on proprietary platforms, and that have a login capability and have deep demographics based on people having to register. That's look at Facebook and Twitter, and these are all proprietary platforms that have login and registrations and deep data metrics on their users. But the podcasting space today, there's a lot of apps out there that don't require deep registration data and don't have that type of data that is handling a lot of consumption of podcasts today.
Consumers are tired of being spied upon to the level that they are, and the data that we're able to extract today out of podcast statistics and through demographic surveys tells a very beautiful picture of what's going on with a show and what they can deliver. If they want to squabble over 1,000 downloads per episode of potential delta, then they really need to have their heads examined. That's people trying to make cases for issues and where there really isn't any. I keep saying, that the folks that are bitching and whining the most about podcast metrics are the folks that don't either have a deep knowledge of the space or don't have metrics themselves. So, we're not having any issues, none, with media buyers. Absolutely no problems with reporting, no problems with the, getting campaigns going. It's such a crock.
Yeah. Well, and Sean does go on to stay here on the subject of podcast management. Sean expressed an optimistic vision of the future, more than just possible. It's probable that a paradigm shift will happen, resulting in much more listening data that will unlock the agency's floodgates. Buying is basically being held back by a lack of data about listening. Right now, we're still selling downloads, which is fine for DR advertisers, direct response advertisers. Users put in a code and the advertiser can measure the effectiveness. that way. Those advertisers are coming back again and again, paying high CPMs. Um, so we know where podcasting works, he says. So interesting.
The Apple's never going to give up the play data. They're never going to send a signal back that when someone has downloaded the show that they're going to play. If they do, I will be the first to say thank you, but I highly, highly doubt that will ever happen.
And Sean, I want to put, if you happen to be listening to this, and I know you do listen to the show, certainly we want you to come on and let's talk about all this stuff. Let's get it torn apart. Both Todd and I have been involved, as you know, in this space for a long time and have worked on ad insertion. I've worked on ad insertion at Podcast One, and we've deep dive into this kind of stuff, and we are concerned about combining streaming data with podcasting data, and there's an interest in doing that, I know, from the radio side. But we just have to be careful that we kind of do that correctly, because it could cause more problems than we realize.
And people want those pre-produced Geico spots. They want those desperately. They want those $6 or $3 or $4 CPMs that come with Geico spots.
Programmatic is there's a big push behind it, and it may just blow up in your face.
Yep. And I think if they are, based on prior comments he said about, pre-recording, that pre-recording a host endorsed spot,
which is fine.
Yep, it's fine if it's done correctly. The key is if it's done correctly. And
I think that's where the rubber hits the road on this topic, is that how is that host read going to be done where it's as effective as a baked-in host read?
Right.
I don't hear anybody talking about that part.
Right. Well, there has to be some evidence of it because people are doing it already.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And it's everyone thinks they've got this secret sauce formula. I was talking with Angelo about this earlier in the week about the injection part and doing ad injection. And, I've already mapped out, if we build an ad insertion system, what it would look like. And last thing I'm going to do is blab about it on this show, but there is a way to do it correctly. And so I'll leave it at that. So, but it's still, for us, we understand that, a lot of the biggest complaint is, okay, for example, on host endorsed stuff, and I've talked about this before on the show. People say, well, I don't want my Thanksgiving ad to be in the copy that's being played in January. Well, in 90% of the time it won't. Just because of the way shows are being consumed. If you're worried about, there are certain shows that need to be rebuilt. We've stressed that 100 times on this show. So for some shows, it's necessary. For most shows, it's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be a significant impact that you're going to have to worry about it. And just a small set of shows are going to want to have all the ads replaced in all their episodes. I know that's a big part of what a lot of the reasons for selling dynamic ad insertion is, to be able to be consistent across your campaigns, across all your archives and your current episodes with your sponsor messages, to maximize your run rate on your advertisers. That's a blade that cuts both directions. Up to date, a lot of the value that a lot of advertisers have gotten from doing host reads is the fact that they are baked in. And you're kind of depriving those advertisers of the long-term ad insertion value that comes from having it baked in.
Yeah, if your show has long tail.
Yeah, I mean, even if it has a small long tail, that can be of value to an advertiser if you maintain that affiliate code. Right?
It's time for me to run a new report. It's time for me to run a global report on number of downloads, averages per episode,
over time.
over the
Yeah.
beyond the first 96 hours.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it drops off dramatically in most shows, right?
oh, it's like falling off a cliff and hitting the desert floor. And then there's an occasional
That's true.
cactus out there that pops up where you get one or two or three, not usually tens and twenties. Mike says if I hear one Geico ad in a podcast, I hit stop and unsubscribe right away. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
There lays the risk. And also, he says the content creators, in a lot of cases, do not want this. So this is going to appeal to a small segment of shows that are willing to take a pre-baked Geico ad in their podcast. Now, if I do a Geico ad, that might be a little different. If I do a host-read Geico ad, but I don't know.
It's an interesting question. How would Geico do a host-endorsed Geico ad?
They wouldn't.
I mean, it's no, but if they were to do that, what would that look like? I wonder.
Well, you look at everyone knows their slogan. What does it say? 10% or something? It's baked into our brains, right? It's going to be around the same theme, and people are going to go, cock the gun, boom, pop, pop. They don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a way to give them a 25% discount by listening to a podcast, well, that might be different. But there's no way that you can, on a campaign like that, can you offer something special? And that's what we've been able to do with host endorsed direct response ads, is offer something special.
Yeah.
So the user listening to us, I know we got a lot of feedback on the last show on Facebook. We got a lot of feedback, a variety of places on the last episode. So, if you're a listener, or if you're a podcaster, do you want a Geico ad, or we're picking on Geico here because Geico spends a lot of money on national TV and radio. So do you guys want a Geico ad in your show? How would you react if you heard a Geico ad in someone else's show? I'd love to hear that. That's a dynamic I don't know if they're thinking completely through.
Yeah. And like you say, it gets back to who the advertiser is as well as the actual message.
Yep.
Do you want, yeah.
Ford did some good stuff, but early on, what did Ford do? They podcaster got a vehicle, on a 1-year lease or something to that effect, and he drove it for a year and he talked about it, but that was one show. You can't do that with 500 shows.
Yeah. That's true.
But what happens? But also, I see mommy podcasters. Is that the right way to say that? She podcasts or mom shows? Is that? If I've offended anyone, I'm sorry. But I see them, doing reviews and selling their souls for, a $5 product too. So, you can't let people be taken advantage of us. And that was when it goes back to these CPM rates. They want to give you like this. Well, when they can buy YouTube and Pandora and Spotify for $6, why do they want to pay a podcast? They can buy all the inventory they can handle on those platforms. Why would you ever pay a podcaster $20? You wouldn't. Not in that scheme of things. And there has to be added value to get the CPMs up.
Yep. There's got to be something that's unique about this medium that compared to a programmatic ad buy.
Right.
It's got to be a premium buy. It's got to be something that has extra value that connects at a deeper level with listeners.
But premium buys take work, Rob, and this is the problem that they're having. Media buyers don't like to do that extra work. And most media companies don't have creative in-house. In other words, they're not creating creative in-house. It's coming from the vendor. Some do, but...
Or it's coming from an agency or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So...
and that's expensive time. I mean, I mean, unless that agency can create concepts behind, for host reads that can be done authentically by podcast hosts. But I'm not sure that an agency really can get that much involved in
They're used to push
host
that.
reads,
They're used to being able to, make it
control everything.
yeah, and buy by a click of a button,
Mm-hmm.
and not
Yeah.
necessarily, they may talk to a person, but the buys are pretty automated.
Yeah.
They do have sales teams, but here's the trick: once you get an IO with a company, unless you screw up, they just keep redating the IO and sending it back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. I think this is going to be an interesting move. I think Art 19 has challenges ahead. I wish them luck. Again, they're competing for a very small piece of pie of the podcasting space, where the volume that they're going to need to do at those lower CPMs potentially. Once
Well,
they get
he's
up,
trying to. I mean, it appears like he's trying to thread the line between host reads and dynamic insertion, which
oh,
will
okay,
hopefully preserve some of that CPM.
it will on, but not. It will on the regular ads that we're traditionally used to, but it will not. I don't know how he can protect that with. If he figures that out, how to protect the CPMs on a Geico ad,
Oh, yeah.
then he's going to be very, very, very successful.
Yeah.
I'll have. You want my inventory? Let's be frank.
I guess there's a creative director on, I guess, as a member of the Art 19 board from the Ogilvy and Mather advertising agency, um, and Teddy Lynn, I guess.
Uh huh.
So as you start looking at these big, huge ad agencies out of New York, maybe that's why he's on the board, is to help them solve some of those issues,
Yeah.
right? Of
Yeah.
how a big creative agency that's driving brand advertising
Yeah.
can position host reads, dynamically inserted host reads, and have it be compatible with these big advertisers.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of a Geico commercial as a host read is kind of a new idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I've heard anybody do it
Nope.
at this point.
Nope.
And
Again, it goes back, and it goes back to the creative. How do you do the? Like I said, most of these agencies don't have creative.
yeah,
Doing audio creative. They've got great teams that are going in and doing the. And they're,
kind of,
but they're doing 10. They have 3 ad rotations or 5 or whatever they've spent $1 million to build.
yeah, yeah. They're creating, 3 or 4 television commercials and 3 or 4 radio ads, and they just push them out everywhere.
Yep, and those aren't cheap.
Yeah.
And can you do the volume you need with podcasting to pay for something unique? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question, Sean. Come on and let's talk about that, because
Yeah.
I think it's an important consideration. I know you're concerned probably about sharing too much of your strategy here, but let's think about the bigger picture of the whole medium.
Yeah.
Because if we can solve this, it's going to be good for everyone. It's going to be good for your company. It's going to be good for all the companies out there. And I know this is what Podcast One wants. This is what Mineral Media wants. They want to solve these problems and get through it and come up with a strategy and approach that everybody likes and actually works with the audience.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some media buyers come on and say there's problems, because the media buyers I'm talking to are the same media buyers everyone else is talking to, and I don't hear people saying there's problems.
Yeah.
That's the thing
Yeah.
that always drives me crazy. I don't get these objections, but I also don't see the metric system these other companies are using, or what they have, available to them as proof that what's being, using trending data and this, stories that go behind that.
Yeah.
It's not complicated, believe me. And the thing that drives me crazy is we're being held to a higher standard than radio is, and television.
Uh huh.
And that's stupid.
Well, because it's different, right? You
Yeah.
can't. It's like apples and oranges somewhat, and that's why I think it's different. Because you can't really compare what we're doing to, I hate to say, ratings and surveys.
Yeah.
Is that's not. It's hard to compare these two mediums and combine them together.
Yep. Hey, Mike is saying that Commission Junction has Geico as a as an affiliate deal. So I guess you could go on and sign up for Geico.
Oh, that's probably banners.
Well, I'm sure, but you can come up with your own. You can come up
Yeah,
with your own ad copy in your podcast,
yeah,
and
you could,
then push them to
sure.
your Geico affiliate page. And
Yeah, you could. That's right.
so, someone creative out there, go do that, please. Give it a try. Uh, I don't know. I wouldn't run Geico on my show. Uh,
It depends on it depends on the show. Some shows it might be okay. I don't know.
right.
You might convert some people if I'm sure. I don't have Geico
I
myself,
I
but
actually use Geico, so that's the funny thing. So
oh, okay.
been a
So
Geico
have you had
customer
a
for
good
years.
experience with Geico, Todd?
Yeah, I've had a good experience. No complaints. They're an insurance company, and they play their game. When you have a little fender bender, you take it, and it's pretty cut and dry these days. It's pretty hard to get screwed on a standard fender bender. I've not been involved in any major accident with injuries where they've had to come in and pay health or anything like that. But what I've experienced have been fine.
I mean, my question is, can a podcaster get a discount on Geico, a greater discount for running an ad campaign, so that they can offer a true testimonial?
I doubt it. Depends how many tickets you've got, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And how many wrecks you've had in a
Yeah,
pre-qualifier. Can I get your driver's license, please?
yeah.
So, anyway, I'm sorry we get in the advertising talk all the time, but just these articles in the podcasting space drive us to it. And I'm very much looking forward to the conversation that happens after the IEB document is released. I'm going to be very interesting to watch the commentary from the space. And I think that's going to be worth a couple of shows worth of discussion and see how people react to the IEB document, especially all the podcasting companies that have not been involved in the process.
What do you think the response is going to be?
Uh,
Positive
I don't know.
overall?
I don't know. I'm pretty hardcore, Rob, and from what you have to do to the filtering in podcasting. We've talked about it on this show. And I don't care what the number is, as long as I know what the number is, and I want all the junk gone. And I think that most folks don't think that deep. So, what Todd wants and what Todd thinks should be 100% in a document is not 100% what's going to be there, because you're dealing with 25 companies and you have to compromise. So I know what we are going to continue to do, and I know what the document's going to show. So I think it's going to be a great document. It's a great standard set. And if companies want to go further, they can go further. But I think it's going to be a great standard set for companies to go to. Again, I haven't seen the final copy, so I can't form my final opinion on, is it strong, is it weak, is it... I think it's pretty strong, though, based on everything I've seen so far. So I think
Do
it's
you see the standard being so widely adopted that maybe it puts a little bit of pressure on you to go, kind of back to that level?
No, I'm not.
No?
No,
Okay.
no. Again, we showed a lot of our cards, and it's not something that's like rocket science, but not a lot. No one is really was willing to put that down. So we laid down a lot of our cards,
Okay.
but I think there's a group, they are all pretty happy with it. So it's better than what we have now. Is nothing.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping, most of the platforms that have developer resources behind them will probably deploy it as quickly as possible.
And I
That would be my guess.
and I think there's going to be some tweaks that probably every company's going to have to make. I think there will be some tweaks, maybe even we have to make. And we're going to come, if there's anything that
Mhm.
we don't, basically in spacing and separation, and I won't go in any deeper than that, but maybe we'll have to change a logarithm number here or there. Will it make much difference? No, but we may have to make a tweak. I'm not saying that we will, but we might.
So I'm just going to put this out there. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a reality on this thing. I mean, how big of a difference do you see the metrics standard that's being recommended being different than what your metrics are? Is it just a couple of maybe? I mean, is it
I don't.
percentage?
I don't have. I have not quantified that number.
Okay.
But what we base this on is, this is just data. So base this
Yeah.
on some realistic expectation of what's happening with data, and also listening and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. So for the person that's listened to a 20-minute show, they'll probably listen to that in one sitting. For the person that's listened to a 3-hour show, they might be listening to that in 4 sittings. If that's over a couple of days,
Yeah.
then that's there's probably going to be no change. But if that person listens, if he listens to a 3-hour show over 5 days, there might be a double count in there. Again, when we reset, I don't know what that number or timeline is, but
Okay.
that's onesie twosies. It's not hundreds and thousands.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
onesie twosies, who cares? But I think it's gonna be
Yeah.
good. I don't care what it is, as long as it's accurate and everyone's talking to the same. We're all beating to the same drum, right?
Yeah,
Boom,
and
boom,
all of
boom.
the ad buyers, you know, they may ask, are you compliant with IAB?
Right.
And I guess it gets back to it's a little bit of an honesty system, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
unless
if you say that you're compliant, how does an agency know that you are?
you spend $150,000 and go get an MRC certification every year.
Jesus.
Every year. Every
Maybe
year.
maybe we should be talking to that agency to come up with something that's a little more reasonable for podcast hosting platforms.
No, that's the cost. So it's not cheap to go out and get the more complex, the more expensive it's going to be too. So it's not cheap to get an MRC certification at all. You know, and if you find it, you're not guaranteed if you aren't compliant, then you don't get the certification. You still spent the money.
Yeah.
So the IEB is not a certification. They don't do that. They don't go out and audit.
Mm-hmm.
There's companies that do audits, and
Yeah.
they get paid handsomely to do that. So in order to afford a $150,000 certification like that every year, the space has to grow for a majority of these companies.
Yeah. It's
And
got to. Yeah. That's a big chunk of money.
and it's annually.
Yeah.
So it's big.
So
That's it.
even after this comes out, the the recommendations from the IAB, there's going to be a period where people are working to adopt it and build it.
To be honest with you, Rob, again, overall, let's go back to the genesis of this. Majority of folks are doing a good job. Majority of these companies are
Mm-hmm.
doing a great job.
So it's more of a tweak than a major build.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Okay.
be a tweak for most folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I doubt podcasters will even notice a delta.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit of a tweak, and some companies may have to make more tweaks than others. But I'm be more interested in hearing the spin that comes out of the, from the, post release of the document. But it's
Yeah.
I think the companies that have again all been participating done a great job, and they've added their value, and and participated and been active. So it's been
Mm-hmm.
a group effort. It's not, it's been a lot of companies have participated and weighed in. So none the companies that participate, at least, I hope we're all happy
Mm-hmm.
with the end result. But and
I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion in the space about, or announcements or about full compliance to this new standard
I
that
hope so.
these platforms will put out, saying that, as of this date, we're launching the new metric standards to be compliant with the IAB recommendations. So
Well, they're going to have to. I'm sure those are going to be interestingly worded documents because they're going to have to. I think most companies are probably very, 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 very close
close,
and have to make
yeah.
minor tweaks.
But
So,
they're going to use it as a reason
oh, of
to
course,
do some
yeah, some
press
PR,
announcements.
of course.
Yeah.
And the more companies that get behind it say we are, and we do, the better. And I'm sure what will happen next is there'll be some examination, and we'll get feedback from the community and feedback from non-participants, and we'll look at that information and decide if there needs to be a tweak in 6 months or a year to it. So
Do you think that we'll see an audit come from some of the larger podcast ad buying agencies?
I'm
Uh,
I'm already
ap-
doing audits.
no, I mean audits around actual support for the new IAB standards.
Typically agencies don't do an audit unless they have a concern that they didn't get what they paid for.
Yeah.
That's the only time we really see audits come down.
Okay.
And it
Mm-hmm.
usually has to be pretty gross, a gross delta.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's
Interesting.
typically the only time that I've never been served an audit by a media agency coming back and asking to audit our stuff. I'm prepared that call ever comes, but
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, what agencies will do if they think they've been burned, they will just put you on the blacklist and you won't get any more ad deals. And they have their own internal do not work with this vendor or whatever list. I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they, and also I've also heard the story from vendors, and this is even more interesting. I can't say the vendor's name, and actually, when the podcast movement on demand, can I say this? Yeah, I can, because it was publicly said. So the team over at Performance Bridge was on a panel at Podcast Movement, and he said that they have a master spreadsheet of all the companies that they work for, and they tweak as necessary. So they're already making internal adjustments. So that makes you go, hmm. Are you
So is
following me?
that master list based on
Their experience.
ROI, or is it based on other factors?
I don't know, but they tweak. That's what he said. And and I don't want to be quoted here because I want to make sure that you guys listen to the video when it comes out on the podcast movement stuff. You can listen to him say it yourself.
Speaking of that,
And matter of fact, we need to get off here, but go ahead.
yeah, I think those session videos are going to be posted soon, from what I gather,
I hope
right?
so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to the sessions I wasn't able to go to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, we
All
went
right.
way deep here, and I got appointment for new breaks in 35 minutes. So
All right. Go
hey,
to it.
everyone, thanks for being here. We went way long today, but we got deep in here at the end. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Send your comments to either Todd at newmediashow.com, or you can ping me on Twitter at Geek News. Rob, how about you?
Rob at Spreaker is a great place to get a hold of me with an R, and you can also send it to just Rob at robgreenlee.com is another way. And then I'm on Twitter at Rob Greenlee, and that's with two E's. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
And if you're a podcast luminary or someone that agrees or disagrees with us and you want to participate in the show and come on and have a debate, we'd love to have you on. We're nice. We won't beat you up. We just sometimes need to get an understanding.
Not too badly, anyway. We'll beat you up.
That's right. And otherwise, we can just continue to sit here and have our opinions. And
That's
not,
right. And
there's
no other contributing differing thoughts here.
That's right.
Just us.
You can't put us in check.
Exactly.
And we want you to come back and give us feedback and tell us your side of the story. So
tell us we're wrong.
Yeah, and why, and put me in my place. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. We hope you had a good time. I had a good time, and we'll see you next week here on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, let me turn off YouTube first. Bye-bye, YouTube. Oh, we had a lot of people on YouTube.